Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty amazing. A new study that actually maps how a single dose of a psychedelic can physically remodel our brains for weeks. Okay, let's get right into it.
So, here's the big question, the central puzzle, really, behind psilocybin. That's the active compound in magic mushrooms. I mean, we get how a drug can work while it's in your system, right? But how in the world can one dose lead to therapeutic benefits that stick around for weeks? What's physically happening in the brain to make that even possible?
To figure this out, we have to look beyond the psychedelic experience itself and actually peek under the hood. We need to see the cellular blueprint, the physical changes happening inside the brain that are driving these incredible clinical results.
And let's be clear, we're not talking about some fringe studies here. Major clinical trials have shown again and again that psilocybin can be a really powerful tool against depression. But the thing that truly astonished researchers wasn't just that it worked, but for how long it worked.
And this is the part that's just mind-blowing. We're not talking about a temporary mood lift that's gone the next day. The therapeutic effects last for over a month from a single dose. That's a huge clue that something deep and physical is going on, that the drug is literally causing the brain to restructure itself. Okay, so to understand this whole restructuring thing, scientists decided to zero in on two key players. They're both types of neurons you find in the frontal cortex, which is, a super critical area for our mood, for decision-making, basically for how we think about the world.
So you can think of these two types of neurons as different communication specialists. On one hand, you've got the pyramidal tract neurons, or PT neurons. They're like the brain's long-haul truckers, sending signals over vast distances. Then you've got the intra-telencephalic neurons, or IT neurons. They're the local messengers, just handling communication in their immediate neighborhood, and understanding their different jobs is really the key to this whole puzzle.
And you can really see it here in this amazing illustration from the study. Just look at the orange PT neuron. You can see how its whole structure is built for sending signals far and wide. Now compare that to the purple IT neurons. They're bushier, more localized, just perfectly designed for networking with their close-by neighbors.
So the next question is, how do you actually see what a drug is doing to these tiny connections deep inside the brain? Well, to find out, the researchers needed a way to map out all the wiring with incredible precision. They basically needed a forensic toolkit for the brain. And they used a seriously cool tool called monosynaptic rabies tracing. I know, the name sounds a little intense, but it's actually this really elegant way to create a precise wiring diagram. They use a modified, totally harmless virus that jumps backward from a neuron to all the cells that talk to it, essentially lighting them all up like a highlighter.
The experiment itself was so clever, just a three-step process to get a before and after picture. So first, they used genetic tools to specifically target either the PT long haulers or the IT local messengers in mice. Second, they used that tracing virus to light up all their incoming connections. And finally, the most important part, they compared the brain maps from mice that got psilocybin to those that just got a simple saline solution.
And wow, check this out. This is what those connection maps actually look like. This isn't just a diagram. It's a 3D reconstruction from the real data. It just reveals this unbelievably complex web of inputs feeding into the frontal cortex from all over the brain.
All right, and this brings us to the big reveal, the moment of truth. After all that high-tech mapping, what did the brain maps actually show?
Well, here it is. This is the solution to the whole mystery. It turns out psilocybin doesn't just randomly shake things up in the brain. Nope. It makes these dramatic, highly targeted, and get this, even opposite changes to the two types of neurons we've been tracking. So, first up, let's look at our long-haul truckers, the PT neurons. After just one dose of psilocybin, they started receiving way more input. They were forming more connections with other parts of the brain. They were becoming more globally connected.
And we're not talking about small changes here. I mean, look at this. They gained a massive 27% increase in connections from the networks that handle seeing and hearing, and a 17.5% bump from sensory motor areas. The brain's long-range communication lines were getting a major upgrade. Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. In a complete flip, the local messenger IT neurons actually had their inputs trimmed back. So while the long haulers were busy adding connections, the local guys were losing them. They lost almost 10% of their connections from that same sensory motor network, and about 7% from something called the medial network. It's like a very targeted pruning of these local circuits.
The scientists themselves called this a distinct and opposite pattern of reorganization.
And that's the whole point, right? This isn't chaos. Psilocybin is like a conductor, orchestrating this highly specific, dual-action rewiring of the frontal cortex.
Okay, so the brain is getting rewired in this very specific way. But so what? What does strengthening some connections while weakening others actually mean for treating something like depression?
Well, this points to a really powerful idea. See, depression is often described as the brain getting stuck in these rigid, negative feedback loops. So by beefing up those global, long-range connections, psilocybin might be helping the brain become more flexible and integrated. And at the exact same time, by pruning some of those local circuits, it could be physically breaking down the very wiring that keeps those depressive loops going. It's like a hard reset for the brain.
You know, this research just opens up a completely new way of thinking. We're starting to move away from just thinking about chemical imbalances and toward a model of physically remodeling brain circuits. And that, of course, raises this huge, tantalizing question. Could treatments that are designed to precisely rewire our brains be the future of mental health care? This study suggests we are one giant step closer to finding out.